We'll kickstart this edition with some news just coming in, and this has got to do with the outage, which has, in fact, we know, stemming from a cybersecurity vendor for Microsoft Azure called CrowdStrike. A few hours ago, they rolled out an update, which they are now in the process of rolling back globally. They are an enterprise security firm that prevents such malware, which can compromise systems, but have managed to do just that with this particular update. The outage has stemmed from a cyber-security vendor for Microsoft Azure called CrowdStrike. Some time ago, they had rolled out an update which they are, in fact, now in the process of rolling back globally. My colleague Cyrus is getting us more details. Cyrus is the editor. Cyrus, I beg your pardon, is the editor of Emerging Tech, IndiaToday.in. Cyrus, essentially, this was some sort of a essentially they were looking at working on preventing malware that affects systems in this fashion that it has, and they ended up doing just that. What really happened here? What more details you have with you at this point in time?
Correct, Sneha. So, as much as I can understand, CrowdStrike and Microsoft work very closely for cybersecurity solutions. There are a lot of customer data and also data relevant to aviation that is within the Azure Microsoft cloud system. Now, CrowdStrike is another cybersecurity firm, and in partnership with some of Microsoft's Defender services, cybersecurity services like Sentinel, Defender, they collaborate to enhance the overall security of the ecosystem. Now, what I can assume happened here is that CrowdStrike has to push these real-time updates to ensure that the security is more strengthened on a daily basis, because this is real-time data that people are dealing with in aviation or banking, and it is critical data. So CrowdStrike pushed out an
Cyrus,
update.
in fact, I'll just come back to you in a moment from now. Do be with us. Massive Microsoft outage across the globe. These are details that we have at this point in time, where major disruption in Microsoft caused widespread flight cancellations and delays across the world. This includes our own country. Delhi Airport, Dubai Airport, Los Angeles Airport, Amsterdam Airport were among the many more airports impacted because of this massive outage. It disrupted flight operations of IndiGo, Air India, Vistara, Akasa Airlines and SpiceJet. Major international airlines like American Airlines, Turkish Airlines also grounded their flights until further notice amid unprecedented outage. Pawan Duggal, cyber expert, joining us at this point in time. Pawan Duggal, thank you for your time. This is rather unexpected. The manner in which this particular malware, it seems, has brought down systems, not just airlines, bank services, international media outlets, services of telecom companies. What's really going on? And, how can situations, Pawan Duggal, of this nature be avoided?
Well, this is the kind of an episode that the world was waiting to happen. But everybody was not wanting to believe it. Everybody felt, well, cybersecurity is a lip-serving exercise. But now with this episode happening, it's no longer just about a mere malware. It's no longer just about a mere spyware. It's an issue of a computer contaminant, which is going ahead and disrupting the global operations of the digital economy. It's something much more than a cybersecurity breach. It also has potential elements of a cyber terror attack. Why? Because when I look at across the world, there's terror and panic happening everywhere. Everybody is concerned as to why this has happened. And if the objective of the said so-called cyber actors who are behind this was to create terror and panic, then to a large extent, they are beginning to get successful. So clearly, governments of the world have to start jumping into the matter right away, investigating into this matter, and then also realizing that national cyber security laws are not at all adequate to deal with international paradigms like the present episode. Somewhere down the line, nations have to come together and say, look, the next time this happens, we must have in place appropriate international legal frameworks to deal with cybersecurity, which currently don't exist. The Budapest Convention or the Convention on Cybercrime of the Council of Europe is definitely not adequate in this particular regard. But more significantly, I think the focus has to come back on cyber resilience. The focus is how quickly can we come back to a state of normalcy. Now, whether it's going to be a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, we don't know yet. But clearly, it could potentially span over a longer period of time. In such a scenario, countries have to not only now mandate cyber resilience methodologies for stakeholders, more importantly, disaster recovery management have to play a very important role in the architecture and the network planning of various stakeholders. Because if all your eggs are into this particular basket and that basket is not responding, then clearly your business operations are impacted. And when I look at all around, it's panic. Well, airlines are getting stopped. They are not being able to operate. Hospitals are being impacted. Television channels and their relays and telecasts are also being prejudicially impacted. And it's not just these ones. It's almost in every area of human activity that we could see this kind of an impact. Therefore, the more focus will have to be on cybersecurity. But till that time happens, we'll have to wait on what will be the investigations in this particular episode. And finally, I think the vendor's responsibility, the concerned network service provider's responsibility also will have to be.
Pawan Duggal, I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now to tell our viewers about this news that we have from our sources within the government. Microsoft outage has been taken cognizance of, is what we are learning from our sources. MeitY will soon issue an advisory in this regard. Pawan Duggal, what is it that you're expecting this government, our government, to do with regard to this, given that you did say there are systems essentially are not prepared for a situation like this, clearly?
Well, currently the Indian nation is not prepared to deal with scenarios like this. This is so because we don't have a national cybersecurity law. Our national cybersecurity policy has been a mere paper tiger, has not been implemented. And for the last many years, we have been ruminating and ideating on a national cybersecurity strategy, which has still not seen the light of the day. But having said that, I think going forward, the government has to wake up and mandate cyber resilience as integral parts of the ecosystem. The government has to mandate more provisions on protection and preservation of cybersecurity. The government needs to expand the scope and ambit of intermediary liability and exemptions under Section 79 of the IT Act. And I think far more focus has to be on creating more capacities amongst various stakeholders on the importance of the need for preserving and protecting cybersecurity. Maybe a new dedicated law is the need of the hour. But till that time that happens, the government needs to come up with specific guidelines, rules and regulations under Section 87 of the Information Technology Act to deal with this scenario. The law enforcement agencies need to investigate this as to whether there's a cyber terror element or not. This is definitely a cybersecurity breach, and India needs to do far more in terms of not just dealing with the potential challenges, but also for the purposes of going ahead and giving the confidence to the digital stakeholders that it's doing everything in its power and possession to deal with this kind of a cyber emergency is what I'm going to call it. And I think the government has done a lot of good work, but we need to do far more work because of the magnitude of this kind of a problem. And I think we also need to think out of the box and create more detailed roadmaps as to what should be the roles, duties, and responsibilities of various stakeholders once episodes like these happen at the national level. The government of India also needs to tie up with other governments and start coming up with international legal principles which can govern as to how nations are going to deal with this entire issues which are of an international nature. Internet has made geography history, and these kinds of episodes are bound to keep on happening. So we need to be in a state of preparedness. Cyber resilience, cyber security has to be the central focal points of governmental policy and regulation.
All right, I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now, Pawan Duggal. My colleague Cyrus also was telling us earlier about what happened, essentially, what could have happened here. Cyrus, for our viewers, once again, take us through the details of what really caused this mayhem.
Thanks, Neha. So a lot of people, I'm sure, have seen it at home. They have experienced this blue death screen of death at home. But most of these complications that they face at home happens due to hardware issues or some bugs that they encounter. Now, on a global scale, if you're encountering something like this, what we can assume is that CrowdStrike, which is the cybersecurity partner with Microsoft, might have released an update that weren't compatible with the entire Microsoft suite, Azure suite, their security suite. And these caused complications, and that incompatibility has caused the major disruptions. Now, we need to understand this is real-time data that both these companies deal with. There's a lot of private security data that is happening within the aviation sector and the banking sector. Now, security updates need to be pushed constantly again and again to make sure that the entire cybersecurity infrastructure is holding itself against cyber attacks. I guess what has happened here is that the CrowdStrike released an update which was incompatible with Microsoft's ecosystem of applications, and that incompatibility has caused disruptions all over. There is no fix yet that Microsoft has talked about, but again, they're rolling back the update to ensure that operations can resume. But the complication, what we can understand, is incompatibility of these updates between the two ecosystems is what has caused disruption, what we can believe.
All right, this is the information that we have with us right now about Microsoft indicating that a preliminary root cause appeared to be a configuration change that Cyrus is also telling us about in a portion of its Azure backend workloads. Cyrus, for the layman, just give us an idea about how long will it take, possibly, for these, for these things to get restored once again, for normalcy to return.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer because these updates, while companies are working with really big hardware infrastructure, they can be fixed within minutes. But to understand the complication right now, we need to realize that this has happened at a global stage, which means the problem is massive. So for the fix to come into place, I think it will take some time. While Microsoft hasn't really given us a timeline on when the fix will happen, for the updates to be rolled back, I think the rollback of the errors can be done swiftly. That is something that can be done. For operations to resume, I think it will be a couple of hours because it is a matter of urgency. But yes, it's very difficult to say, Sneha, how much time Microsoft will take to revert to the normal operations, the normalcy, as you said.
All right. Once again, I want to ask you, Cyrus, about, the various things that have gotten affected in India, for example, and even outside, from airlines to Microsoft apps. We have a list of things that have been affected, a list of services that have been hit in India. Talk to us a little about that as well.
Correct. So most of these institutions are working with the Microsoft suite of apps, be it Microsoft Word, and not only that, not only just suite of apps, they use their cloud services. Azure, Microsoft Cloud Services are also a quintessential part of their entire cybersecurity or their data ecosystem. So when your data is on the Microsoft servers, you are kind of bound within that ecosystem, and if any disruptions or if any bug enters the Microsoft suite or their application, the host is affected. The person who is serving that data or basically hosting that data will be affected. It affects all of the users. So when you have data on the cloud, it could be not just Microsoft. I could be talking with examples of Google. If you have your data on the Google cloud and the Google servers are not functioning, you will be affected. You won't be able to access data. So I guess similar operations are right now taking place here where the compatibility, like I mentioned, CrowdStrike updates were pushed on the Microsoft security solutions. They were not compatible, which is why this is causing a disruption. And for other institutions, again, if any institution works with Microsoft suite of apps, even on their servers, they will be affected. I think our stakeholders need to understand, they need to make people aware that we are also a part of Microsoft ecosystem, and they need to inform the various customers or people, their users, because I think that would be the right thing to do, that they need to inform the people who have been affected and keep it as transparent as possible.